Awesome. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Technically Human. I'm not sure if you guys caught the last episode, but we have officially branded this ongoing content series, and we're going to be calling it Technically Human. I have Eric Gong, who's been an ongoing, recurring guest on this show, and we're so happy and excited to have him today. Hey, Eric, you want to do a quick intro for yourself?
Yeah. First, thanks, David, for having me on this show. I am a former VP of engineering turned recruiter. I help startups scale by helping them hire talent.
I love it. Yeah, so like Eric said just now, he was a engineering leader in his former life, and this week we want to talk about something I think that a lot of folks will find useful and helpful, and really like not a lot of people talk about. And what we want to talk about today is maybe the hardest or the toughest moments in your time as an engineering manager. We really want to talk about the least talked about subjects as it has to do with engineering management, and just want to hear your stories on how what the situations were that were really hard for you, how you overcame them if you did, or if you experienced some kind of failure, what it was and how it felt. I think like the impetus for this conversation is we've been hearing a lot that there's just not a lot of space for folks to feel safe to at least share or hear that other people don't have it all figured out either. And so with Technically Human, we talk about the most human aspects of managing technical humans. That's hence the name. And so we want to talk about, the hard stuff, the stuff that isn't talked a lot about, maybe something that might feel embarrassing to bring up or like hard to admit. So those are all the things we want to talk about today. So Eric, I'll let you go.
Yeah. So I hate to break it to the listeners, but the road of leadership is a road of endless failure. I fucked
Yeah.
up more times than I can count. And I
Mm.
think some additional context that would be helpful for our new listeners is I worked at 4 startups. I worked my way up from IC to manager. My previous company, I was started as director with several engineers on the team, became VPE with about 50 engineers on the team. So we went from really flat to more hierarchical. Can
Hmm.
never pronounce that word. And I've made literally every mistake that one could think of, right? So that's
Mm.
really the context. So I guess where I could start is with what I just said, right?
Yeah.
Management, for me, computers are easy and people are hard. I could write a computer program and it'll output whatever I think it should output and it'll do it consistently.
Hmm.
I'd say for humans, humans are hard because depending on the day of the week, depending on when you ask, an input can have a very different output.
Totally.
So I'd say for me personally, and the reason why I got into management, honestly, was originally I thought that was where all the money was. But as I grew in my career, I grew to love it because engineering management is really understanding humans and the human condition. It's
Hmm.
helping people find their best selves, right?
Sure.
And the road of endless failure is because in management, you're going to encounter new situations all the time that make you feel like you got your ass kicked. And for all our listeners out there, for all the people that reached out to you and said, hey, let's talk about what's not talked about. I've got a lot of those stories. So I'm just going to riff on stories. You could tell me
We
what's
love it.
interesting or not. I
Yeah.
think last time we talked about the first female engineer on the team.
Hmm.
And for those people, I'm not going to repeat the story, but you should listen to that. Check out the previous episode. I'd say there are at least like three things that kind of come to mind immediately. I think there are
Mm.
more, and then we could dig into whatever you think is right.
Okay.
So, or most interesting. So, one is like as a leader, I feel like you're always wrong or you always fuck up no matter how hard you try.
Hmm.
And there's stories down that route. There was a story where I feel like I caused someone to leave the company
Oh wow.
and I still don't know what the right answer is, and
Mm.
I don't know if I did the right thing or I fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good one. And then the third one that I struggle with a lot is being a privileged male in tech, trying to lead women and never knowing if I'm doing the right or effective thing. So those are like three things. I think like
Yeah.
any of them could be like pretty juicy. So
Yeah.
pick your choice. Door number one,
Let's
door
let's
number
go with
two.
num
Yeah.
let's go with door number two.
Okay.
I think a lot of people will be interested. I think the most interesting things and the hardest things are when there is no black and white answer, right? So
Yeah. So I hope I don't mess up this story. For to protect the identities of these individuals, I will redo their names, but
perfect.
I think they will know who they are. I think the context is I feel like I am an empathetic leader. I
Mm.
feel like I'm the people's champion when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
leadership. I feel like I seek to understand first, right?
Right.
So I'm just setting all the context of how I am as a leader. I'm not one of these like
Yeah.
asshole bosses or something like that. At least I don't think so.
Yeah.
Ask people that reported to me, they might say different. I don't know, but that's from my perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we work at a startup, and it could be pretty casual, right? And we play music sometimes at the startup.
Mm-hmm.
So we have one engineer on the room. I think there's like 30 or 40 engineers in, let's say, call it the engineering pit, but it
Sure.
has engineering, has product, etc. And at one end of the room, there's an engineer who likes to express, let's say, himself. All right. Let's call him Bob.
Okay.
So Bob was singing really loudly and possibly like annoying, right?
Okay. Sure.
And all right, so you got a little bit of music going in the ground. It's not like too loud, but it's you. There is music in the background. On the other end of the room is a very sensitive engineer.
Okay.
Let's call him Jim. So like Bob and Jim. So Bob is singing and Jim is like very sensitive to noise.
Right.
And in this scenario, Jim DMs me, slacks me, and says like, "Hey man, like Bob is singing in a real like I don't want to sound like an ass, but like Bob is singing in a really annoying way."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hey, I can understand. What would you like me to do in this situation?" So Jim was like, tell him to stop singing. And I just said like I could certainly do that as like a boss, but I just want you to like be mindful that I'm gonna go and tell another person the thing that they're doing is like really disruptive. And
Sure.
they're like, yeah, it's like it's really disruptive. And I was like, okay, fine, like I'll get in there. So I messaged Bob. I was like, hey man, like really sorry to share this, and I hope you don't take offense, but someone said the singing is a little bit loud. Could you please cut back?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And in my mind, like I try to handle it as gently as I can. And
Sure.
I was like, and then Bob was like, yeah, like no problem. And then I was like, all right, like it's done. I was like, oh, cool. Like
Mm-hmm.
another day of management life, someone complained. And
Yeah.
like that's my life, right? That's the
Right.
manager's life. And then like 3 hours later, I got asked by Bob to do like a one-on-one. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then Bob, like, we get in the meeting, and then the Bob was like, hey, man, like, I feel like you didn't like defend me there. And then, like, he
Mm.
was like, oh, like, I don't think you were right. I was like, hey, man, like, that wasn't my goal. But,
Mm-hmm.
in a scenario like this, I just need I, as a manager, am just trying to help people have more awareness of their
Sure.
behavior, of how they are affecting others.
Right.
So like we got the one-on-one. I was like, okay, like I think I did a good job there. I was like empathetic and I listened first before speaking.
Mm.
And like Bob just left the office. And I saw Bob walk out. I was like, and it was like mid afternoon, right? And I was
Mm.
like, okay, like all right, this person just needs to like cool off. And like no message to the team and like no message to me like hey. And then the next day like Bob's just like I'm not coming in today. Like not the greatest Slack message. So I was like, so I messaged Bob, I was like, hey, like let's talk later. And so got a call, a video call, and like heard what was going on. And Bob
Mm-hmm.
was like, hey, like I feel like you didn't defend me. I was like, I'm just not happy, and like I had to leave. And then I went into, I'm usually like more empathetic mode, but when people act like that, I turn the dial up when I feel like
Mm-hmm.
something is wrong, because I felt like Bob was just like, oh, like fuck this shit. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't need to
Mm-hmm.
tell anybody. I don't need to be like whatever. I'll need to hand off my work. Like I'm pissed that I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned up the dial. I was like, hey, I can understand you were really pissed, but it's a team that we have here. And I'm running a team. And unfortunately, if one of us are not feeling it or something happens, I still need communication.
Sure.
And I turned it up, and I was like, not like, I wasn't like this Eric that maybe but I was like the more aggressive one. And I was saying, like, that's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
If you do it again, this isn't the right place for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like like after that meeting, a day later, we had another meeting, and it seemed all cool. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, cool, like I think I did the right thing. And like you know a month later, he resigned. Like Bob resigned. So I don't know. To this day, I don't know how bad I fucked it up.
Right.
I don't know if I was like, if I did the right thing. I don't know if I fucked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in the moment, I did the right thing because it's a team thing. And if people
Sure.
aren't like for the team, they're out. And I always question myself. It's like there are times where you got to put your foot down. I can't always be the people's champion when,
Yeah.
like some shit happens like that.
Sure.
But I still think about that scenario all the time.
Hmm.
And I think about my level of empathy. I think about how I turned it up. So I
Mm-hmm.
definitely did turn it up. I intentionally turned it up because I didn't feel like Bob was getting it.
Yeah.
And yeah, now I shut up. I don't know if that's a good story. I don't know
No,
if it was
that's
like,
no, that's a perfect example because it's like, for me, I have a lot of questions. Like, was there some underlying issues even preceding that event? With Bob, and was he like just generally unhappy? Or is he like the type of person that kind of wanted to push the boundaries? Because for me, from outside standpoint, like singing loudly in the office, like maybe it's funny for like 30 seconds one time, but I think to do that ongoing maybe suggests like I don't know. I'm not sure actually why a person
yeah.
would do something like that. And not only that, why a person would get so upset for not being able to do something that kind of seems like something you shouldn't do in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
I would say that Bob is really easygoing, really nice
Hmm.
guy. Not an asshole, not like
Yeah.
one of these like engineers you don't want to work with. I think the thing that I don't know, because as a leader, my strength is like the people's champion. Everyone know I'm
Sure.
the people's champion. I think that when you get known for being one way and you like
Hmm.
sway from that, it throws people off. Because it's kind of like your friend who always have your back, and
Yeah.
then one day they're like, "No, you fucked up, man." You're like, "What are you talking about? I didn't fuck up. You're fucking
Hmm.
up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't talk to me."
Right.
Kind of deal. And I always question. I wonder, did I do that in that instance? Because it's almost like
Hmm.
I'm so about for that person that they feel like I didn't back them up, or like I'm on someone else's side. It's almost like
That's true.
I'm telling you to shut up when it's like we got music and it's like always pretty chill. Like, why didn't I tell that other person to line up? I don't know. So I don't think Bob was like bad and Jim's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I think that's one of those fucked up management situations
Mm.
where shit just happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like when I talk to managers and I coach them up, I always say like when they say, "Hey Eric, give me one piece of advice as a manager," I always say, when you think you've maxed out your empathy, there's a lot more room for empathy.
Yeah.
Because I know if you come from the mindset like every problem can be solved
Hmm.
and there's a solution to every problem, I know that there's a solution how I could have solved that better.
Sure.
I still don't know after two
Yeah.
years, but I know that there is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think the kind of the fundamental thing that you bring up from a principle perspective is how do I lean into a particular management style and it not be one taken advantage of, which it kind of seems like it was in this scenario, and then two, it not be, you know, a cause for issue once you kind of, turn up some other lever that you have to turn up as a manager, right? So it's like I think that's a really interesting point. It's kind of like management whiplash. Like, if you like you were saying, if you're used to somebody being really, for example, if you're used to somebody giving really critical feedback all the time, and that's all that they're known for, just being really critical, and all of a sudden one day they're really nice, it kind of makes you feel strange, right? It's like that whiplash feeling. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
and also like I wonder, so if you're a manager listening to this, please leave like some kind of message or like DM David or DM me, because I hope other manager, like I'm pretty sure other managers deal with this, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like all day, every day, I
Mm-hmm.
get I get stuff like this in weird ways,
Yeah,
right?
and
I
this has
sit
nothing to do with building the product.
nothing, and I would never foresee any of this,
Yeah.
right? Like I've got so many other stories. Yeah, whenever I think I've got to figure out as a manager, I know some shit's got to go down because
Mm,
someone somewhere has got to come up with a new situation that is gonna be really hard to handle.
yeah. I think it's like it goes back to this like idea like everyone wants to be taken care of, right? And then once and you could have taken care of them well for months, for years, and it's that one incident, maybe they felt slighted, that kind of turns it all around. It's like I think that's something I think managers need to be talking about more. It's like you work so hard to build this kind of like ladder of trust, but the smallest thing can just kind of make it all tumble down, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I maybe I could have phrased it better. I don't know. It's like the
Yeah.
finest line that I
Yeah.
had to cross. I don't know to this day, man.
Wow. Well, I mean, like Eric said, listeners, if you have any similar stories or advice, or how you handle situations like this that are your job as a manager but have nothing to do with building technical products or coding at all, like I think this is the stuff that causes managers to feel stressed. This is what causes burnout, right? Like just having to deal with these things and not really having solid answers or a space to share. So, we'd love to hear from all of y'all.
Yeah, so I apologize for making a 20-minute story on this singing. Happy to take it wherever you like with our remaining time.
No, I think that's a good place to end. Actually, I think we should save the other two stories for some next episodes. But yeah, I think this is a great little segment. Maybe we should continue on as just kind of management horror stories, or
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. So listeners, send us some of your interesting ones. Let us know what you think, and I'll keep sharing.
love it. Cool. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much, listeners. We hope you found this helpful and enjoyable. Stay tuned for next week's episode of Technically Human.
All right.
All right.
Thanks so much,
Bye.
David. Thank you, listeners. Bye.